Have you ever noticed how we're more afraid of being alone than we are of being unhappy? The silence of an empty room often feels heavier than the weight of unfulfilling relationships. We fill our lives with noise, with people, with endless distractions, anything to avoid facing that quiet moment when it's just us, alone with our thoughts. I've watched thousands of people chase relationships, desperately trying to escape their own company. They jump from one connection to another, convinced that happiness lies in the arms of another person, in the validation of a crowd, in the constant buzz of social media notifications. But here's the truth that many of us aren't ready to hear. If you can't be happy alone, you'll never be truly happy with someone else. Your relationship with yourself is the foundation upon which every other relationship in your life is built. Think about that for a moment. How can you possibly offer authentic love to another person when you haven't learned to love your own company? How can you share joy when you haven't discovered what brings you joy in solitude? Let me share something with you that might sound counterintuitive at first. Loneliness and being alone are two entirely different experiences. Loneliness is a state of mind, a feeling of disconnection that can persist even in a room full of people. Being alone, on the other hand, is simply a physical state. The magic happens when you learn to transform your alone time from something you endure into something you cherish. You see, we've been conditioned by society to believe that being alone is somehow a failure, a sign that something's wrong with us. We scroll through social media, bombarded by images of people supposedly living their best lives, always surrounded by friends, always part of a couple, always in the middle of some exciting social gathering. And slowly, insidiously, we begin to believe that this is what happiness looks like. But let me ask you something. How many times have you felt utterly alone in a crowded room? How many times have you put on a smile while feeling empty inside, desperately trying to convince yourself that being surrounded by people somehow makes you whole? The truth is, learning to be happy alone isn't just about being comfortable in solitude. It's about discovering who you truly are when no one else is watching. It's about developing a relationship with yourself that's so strong, so genuine, that external validation becomes a choice rather than a necessity. Think about the most peaceful moments in your life. Were they really when you were surrounded by chaos and noise? Or were they in those quiet moments when you finally allowed yourself to just be? Those moments when you stopped running from yourself and instead turned inward with curiosity and compassion. We often mistake dependency for love, habit for happiness, and distraction for fulfillment. We've become so afraid of our own thoughts that we'll do anything to avoid sitting with them. But here's what nobody tells you. The very thoughts you're running from hold the keys to your liberation. Every time you reach for your phone, the moment you're alone, every time you fill your calendar to avoid empty spaces, every time you stay in a relationship that doesn't serve you just because you're afraid of being single, you're telling yourself that your own company isn't enough. You're reinforcing the belief that happiness can only be found outside of yourself. But what if I told you that the greatest adventure of your life is waiting for you in those moments of solitude? What if the peace you're seeking, the joy you're chasing, the love you're yearning for, what if all of that begins with learning to be your own best? I remember working with someone who couldn't eat alone in a restaurant. The very thought of sitting at a table by themselves filled them with such anxiety that they'd rather go hungry than face that experience. Does this sound familiar to any of you? This fear of being seen alone? This worry about what others might think? This belief that dining solo somehow marks you as unwanted or unloved? But here's the beautiful truth. When you learn to enjoy your own company, you develop a kind of superpower. You become immune to the kind of manipulation that comes from fear of being alone. You stop settling for less than you deserve in relationships because you know deeply and unshakably that you're already complete. Being happy alone doesn't mean you don't want relationships or connections. It doesn't mean you have to become a hermit or reject the beautiful experiences that come from sharing your life with others. Instead, it means that you approach these connections from a place of wholeness rather than need. You choose them because they add to your already full life. not because they're filling a void. The journey to finding happiness in solitude begins with small steps. It starts with those moments when you catch yourself reaching for your phone and instead choose to sit with your thoughts. It grows stronger every time you do something you enjoy. Not because anyone is watching, not because you'll post about it later, but simply because it brings you joy. Think about the last time you felt truly peaceful. Was it when you were trying to manage other people's expectations? Was it when you were contorting yourself to fit someone else's idea of who you should be? Or was it in those rare moments when you allowed yourself to simply exist without judgment, without pressure, without the need to be anything other than who you are? The world will try to convince you that you need more. More friends, more followers, more relationships, more validation. But what if what you really need is less? Less noise, less distraction, less dependency on external sources of happiness. What if the key to true contentment lies? Not in accumulating more connections, but in deepening your connection with yourself. I want you to try something right now. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath. Feel the weight of your body, the rhythm of your breathing, the beating of your heart. This is you in this moment, completely whole and complete. This is you without any masks, without any pretenses, without any need to be anything other than who you are. How does that feel? When we learn to be happy alone, we develop an unshakable foundation of self-worth that no external circumstance can destroy. We stop being emotional chameleons, changing our colors to match whatever relationship or social situation we find ourselves in. Instead, we become authentic, consistent, and true to ourselves. Whether we're alone or... This journey isn't about building walls or becoming independent to the point of isolation. It's about building a relationship with yourself that's so strong, so nurturing, that it becomes the source from which all your other relationships flow. It's about becoming so comfortable in your own skin that you no longer need others to make you feel worthy or complete. Here's the simple truth about happiness. It's not something you stumble upon by accident. It's like a garden you need to tend to every day. When you're alone, you have this amazing chance to become the gardener of your own joy. But most of us never learned how to care for our inner garden. We're too busy looking over the fence, wondering why everyone else's flowers seem more beautiful than ours. You know what really gets me thinking? The way we treat ourselves when no one's watching. Pay attention to how you talk to yourself when you're alone. Are you as kind to yourself as you are to your friends? Do you show yourself the same patience, the same understanding, the same warmth that you offer others? Most of us don't. In those quiet moments, we become our own worst critics. But something beautiful happens when you start seeing your alone time as special instead of scary. You begin to uncover parts of yourself that were drowning in the noise of constant company. Those quiet moments become your personal space for growth and discovery. Have you noticed those people who seem naturally at peace? Whether they're single or in a relationship, whether they're in a crowd or by themselves, they've figured out something important. They've learned to enjoy their own company. They don't wait for others to watch a movie they want to see. They don't need someone else to try that new restaurant. They've discovered that joy doesn't need an audience. The biggest thing stopping us from finding happiness in solitude isn't really about being alone. It's about facing our own unresolved fears. We're scared of what we might discover if we slow down enough to really listen to our own thoughts. We're afraid of the feelings we've been running from, the questions we've been avoiding, the truths we've been hiding from ourselves. But these fears are like shadows on the wall. They look scary until you turn on the light. And that light, it comes from getting to know yourself, from having the courage to sit with your thoughts and really listen to what your heart has been trying to tell you all along. Think about this. Every wise teacher throughout history has talked about the importance of spending time alone. Not because they didn't like people, but because they understood that the clearest insights, the deepest peace, often come in moments of quiet reflection. When you learn to be happy alone, you develop what I call inner strength. This means your happiness comes from within rather than depending on others. You stop being like a leaf in the wind, blown around by other people's approval or attention. Instead, you become your own safe harbor. Let me share something powerful with you. Every time you choose to spend time alone, not because you have to, but because you want to, you're sending yourself an important message. You're telling yourself that your own company is valuable, that you're worth spending time with, that you don't need others to entertain you or make you feel whole. Our world makes it really hard to be alone. We're always connected, always available, always just one click away from some kind of distraction. Social media shows us endless highlights of other people's lives, making us feel like we're missing out if we're not constantly with others, constantly doing something, constantly sharing our experiences. But what if the real missing out happens when we fail to connect with ourselves? What if every moment we spend distracting ourselves from our own company is a moment we could have spent getting to know the most important person in our lives, ourselves? Think about this. When was the last time you felt truly at peace? Not the kind of temporary escape that comes from watching TV or scrolling through social media, but the deep, real peace that comes from being completely comfortable with yourself and your surroundings. For many of us, that's a tough question to answer. We've forgotten how to just be. We've lost touch with the simple joy of doing nothing, of sitting in silence, of enjoying our own thoughts. We've gotten so used to constant noise that the very idea of being alone with our thoughts feels strange, even scary. But here's something interesting. The more comfortable you become with being alone, the more real your connections with others become. When you're no longer hanging on to relationships because you're afraid of being alone, you can choose connections based on what truly fits rather than what's just convenient. Learning to be happy alone isn't about becoming an island. It's about building such a good relationship with yourself that you can approach all of the relationships from a place of fullness rather than emptiness. It's about becoming so comfortable in your own skin that you no longer need others to make you feel worthy or complete. Think about what you look for in a good friend or partner. Kindness, understanding, patience, support. Now ask yourself, do you give these same things to yourself? When you make a mistake, are you understanding or harsh? When you face a challenge, are you support or critical? When you achieve something, do you celebrate or immediately push yourself to do more? The way you treat yourself when you're alone sets the standard for how others will treat you. If you can't spend time by yourself without needing constant distractions, you're sending a clear message about how much you value your own company. But here's the good news. You can change this. Just like any other skill, being happy alone is something you can learn and get better at. It starts with small steps. Maybe it's having lunch at a cafe by yourself, taking a walk without your phone, or spending an evening doing something you enjoy without feeling the need to post about it. Each time you choose to embrace being alone rather than run from it, you're building emotional strength. You're developing the kind of inner peace that can't be shaken by what's happening around you. You're learning that your worth isn't tied to your relationship status, your social calendar, or the number of likes on your latest post. The most amazing thing about learning to be happy alone is how it changes the way you move through life. When you're no longer afraid of being by yourself, you stop making choices based on that fear. You stop staying in relationships that don't make you happy, giving up your values just to fit in, or saying yes when you really want to say no. The most fascinating thing about learning to be happy alone is watching how it changes your choices. When you stop seeing solitude as the enemy, you start seeing it as an opportunity. Those quiet moments become your chance to reset, to breathe, to figure out what you really want, not what everyone else wants for you. You know what's interesting? Many of us spend our whole lives running away from ourselves, then wonder why we feel lost. We fill every moment with noise, with activity, with people, anything to avoid that quiet space where we might actually hear our own thoughts. But those thoughts, they're trying to tell us something important. Think about how often you check your phone when you're alone. Every notification, every scroll, every quick check of social media. What are you really looking for? Most of us would say we're staying connected, staying informed, staying in touch. But what if we're actually hiding? Hiding from the discomfort of being alone with our thoughts? Hiding from the silence that might actually hold the answers we're seeking? Let me tell you something that might change how you see your alone time. Every moment you spend truly connecting with yourself is like putting money in an emotional bank account. These deposits of self-awareness, self-care, and self-discovery, they're the foundation of real confidence. Not the kind of confidence that needs constant validation from others, but the quiet, unshakable kind that comes from truly knowing and accepting yourself. We live in a world that's afraid of silence. Everything around us screams for attention. Buy this, watch this, be like this, look like this. And in all that noise, we've lost something precious. The ability to hear our own inner voice. That voice that knows what we really want, what truly matters to us, what makes our heart sing. Have you ever noticed how some decisions feel completely different when you make them alone versus when you make them with others, watching or weighing in? When you're alone, you can hear your truth more clearly. There's no need to perform, no need to meet expectations, no need to be anything other than who you are. This journey of learning to be happy alone, it's not just about being comfortable eating at restaurants by yourself or spending Friday nights solo. It's about building a relationship with yourself that's so solid, so real, that you no longer need to hide behind the masks we all wear sometimes. It's about becoming the kind of person you enjoy spending time with. You might be thinking, but what about relationships? What about connections with others? Here's the beautiful thing. When you learn to be happy alone, your relationships actually get better. Why? Because you stop choosing them from a place of need or fear. You start choosing them because they add real value to your life, not because they fill a void. Think about the last time you felt lonely in a relationship. Seems strange, doesn't it? Being with someone but feeling completely alone. That's what happens when we use relationships to escape ourselves rather than to share ourselves. When we haven't learned to be happy alone, we often end up using others as distractions rather than creating genuine connections. Every time you resist the urge to fill your quiet moments with noise, you're growing stronger. Every time you choose to sit with your uncomfortable feelings instead of running from them, you're building emotional muscle. Every time you decide to do something alone that you'd usually only do with others, you're expanding your comfort zone. Let me share something with you about comfort zones. They're like muscles. They only grow when we stretch them. Start small. Maybe it's having your morning coffee in silence instead of immediately turning on the TV. Maybe it's going for a walk without your headphones. Maybe it's spending an evening doing absolutely nothing and being okay with that. The quality of your alone time directly affects the quality of your life. When you're comfortable in your own company, you make better choices. You don't say yes when you want to say no. You don't stay in situations that drain your energy just because you're afraid of being alone. You don't settle for connections that don't fulfill you just because they're convenient. There's this myth that happy people are always surrounded by others, always doing something, always on the go, but real happiness, it's not about being constantly surrounded by people or activity. It's about being at peace with yourself, whether you're in a crowd or completely alone. Think about the times you've felt most alive, most authentic, most in tune with yourself. Were those moments when you were trying to be what others wanted you to be? Or were they moments when you were simply being yourself, following your own inner compass? One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is, what would I do differently if I wasn't afraid of being alone? Would you stay in that relationship that doesn't feel right? Would you keep those friendships that drain your energy? Would you still do things you don't enjoy just to avoid being by yourself? Learning to be happy alone doesn't mean you'll always be alone. It means you'll never again be in relationships because you're afraid of being alone. It means you'll never again compromise your values because you're scared of losing someone's approval. It means you'll never again settle for less than you deserve because you think having someone, anyone, is better than having no one. You know what's amazing about people who've learned to be happy alone? They have this quiet confidence about them. Not arrogance, not superiority, just a peaceful sense of knowing who they are and being okay with it. They don't need constant validation. They don't need to prove anything to anyone. They just are. Every person who's ever truly changed their life has had to face themselves in moments of solitude. Because that's where real change begins. In those quiet moments when we finally stop running from ourselves and start listening to what our heart has been trying to tell us all along. The world will always have opinions about how you should live, who you should be with, what you should be doing. But when you learn to be happy alone, those opinions lose their power over you. You develop an inner compass that's more reliable than any external validation could ever be. Being alone becomes a choice rather than a circumstance. It becomes something you sometimes choose because you value your own company, not something you endure because you have no other option. This shift in perspective changes everything. How you see yourself, how you relate to others, how you move through the world. The moment you stop seeing your own company as something to endure and start seeing it as something to enjoy, your whole world shifts. It's like turning a key in a lock you didn't even know was there. Suddenly, doors open to possibilities you never imagined. Think about how many choices you make every day based on what other people might think or say. How many times have you stopped yourself from doing something you wanted to do because you'd have to do it alone? We limited ourselves in so many ways, all because we're afraid of being seen alone, of being judged, of being perceived as lonely. But here's what changes everything. When you start treating yourself like someone worth spending time with, other people start treating you that way too. It's not magic, it's energy. People can sense when you're comfortable in your own skin, when you're at peace with your own company. That kind of inner peace is magnetic. You might be wondering what this looks like in real life. It's choosing to take yourself on adventures, big and small. It's booking that trip you've always wanted to take, even if no one can come with you. It's going to that concert, that museum, that new restaurant, not waiting for someone to join you, but because you want to experience it. The funny thing about happiness is that it's a lot like a mirror. It reflects back what you put into it. When you start investing in your relationship with yourself, when you start treating your alone time as valuable rather than empty space to be filled, something shifts. You start attracting people and experiences that match your energy, not your fears. But let's be real. This isn't always easy. There will be moments when the silence feels too loud, when the emptiness feels too empty, when the urge to reach for your phone or call someone, anyone, feels overwhelming. These moments aren't failures. They're opportunities to practice being your own best friend. The secret to being happy alone isn't about learning to need less connection. It's about learning to connect more deeply with yourself. It's about building such a rich inner life that solitude becomes as nourishing as good conversation, as exciting as shared adventures, as comforting as time spent with old friends. Every time you choose to face your fear of being alone, you get stronger. Every time you decide to enjoy your own company instead of distracting yourself from it, you grow. Every time you treat yourself with the same kindness you'd show a good friend, you heal. You're not meant to do everything alone, but you're meant to be enough for yourself. When you get this, really get this, you stop trying to fill your life with people and start filling it with purpose. You stop chasing relationships and start creating connections. You stop running from solitude and start seeing it as sacred. The truth is, you're the only person guaranteed to be with you for your entire life. Every other relationship might change, might end, might transform. But your relationship with yourself, that's the foundation everything else is built on. Make it strong. Make it loving. Make it something you can always come home to. This journey of learning to be happy alone isn't about reaching some final destination. It's about discovering that you've been carrying everything you need inside you all along. It's about realizing that alone doesn't mean lonely. That solitude can be sweet, and that the quiet moments might just be where you find your greatest strength. As we come to the end of our time together, I want you to think about something that might change your life forever. Every moment you've spent wishing you weren't alone has been a moment you could have spent discovering how amazing your own company can be. Every time you felt that ache of loneliness, you've actually been standing at the doorway of an incredible opportunity, the chance to become your own best friend. You see, there's this beautiful thing that happens when you finally embrace being alone. The world opens up in ways you never expected. Colors seem brighter. Moments become richer. Simple pleasures take on new meaning. That cup of coffee in the morning becomes a meditation. That walk in the park becomes an adventure. That quiet evening at home becomes a chance to dream, to plan, to simply be. Think about how much energy we spend trying to avoid being alone. We stay in relationships that don't serve us. We fill our calendars with meaningless activities. We scroll through our phones until our eyes hurt. All because we're afraid of what might happen if we just stop, if we just let ourselves be. But here's what I've learned from watching countless people transform their relationship with solitude. The very things we're running from are often the things that will set us free. Those quiet moments we're so afraid of. They're like seeds waiting to bloom into the most beautiful gardens of self-discovery. When you learn to be happy alone, you develop this incredible superpower, the ability to find peace anywhere, anytime. You stop needing external validation to feel worthy. You stop requiring someone else's presence to feel complete. You become your own sanctuary. Remember this. The relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. When you learn to treat yourself with kindness, respect, and love, you naturally start attracting people who will do the same. When you stop seeing alone time as a punishment and start seeing it as a gift, the whole energy of your life shifts. You know what's amazing? The moments when you finally get it, when you realize that being alone doesn't mean being lonely, when you discover that solitude can be as sweet as honey, as refreshing as rain, as peaceful as a sunrise. These moments don't come all at once. They sneak up on you, like stars appearing in the evening sky, one by one, until suddenly you look up and realize the whole night is shining. Your journey to finding happiness in solitude isn't about becoming a hermit or cutting yourself off from others. It's about building such a strong foundation within yourself that you can cherish both your alone time and your connections with others. It's about becoming so comfortable in your own skin that you can move through life with grace. Whether you're in a crowd or completely alone, start small. Next time you're alone, instead of reaching for your phone, reach inward. Ask yourself what you really want in this moment, not what social media tells you to want, not what your family expects you to want, not what society says you should want. What do you want? The answer might surprise you. You might discover that what you really want is different from what you've been chasing. You might find that the peace you've been seeking has been within you all along, waiting patiently for you to notice it. Every single person in this room has the capacity to be gloriously, radiantly happy alone. Not because being alone is better than being with others, but because true happiness isn't dependent on external circumstances. It's something you cultivate within yourself, like a garden that keeps blooming no matter what season it is. As you leave here today, I want you to remember something. You are complete just as you are. Your worth isn't determined by your relationship status. Your happiness isn't dependent on having someone by your side. Your life doesn't start when you find the right person. It's happening right now, in this moment. The next time you find yourself alone, instead of trying to fill the silence, lean into it. Instead of trying to escape the solitude, embrace it. Listen to what your heart has been trying to tell you. Pay attention to the dreams that surface when you're not distracted by others' opinions and expectations. You are not just enough. You are abundance itself. You are not just complete, you are overflowing with potential. And that person you've been waiting for, that person you think will finally make you happy, they're already here. They're you. The greatest love story you'll ever experience is the one where you finally fall in love with yourself, where you discover that your own company is the most precious gift you could ever receive, where you realize that being alone isn't a waiting room for real life to begin. It's the stage where your most authentic self gets to shine. Take this moment right now to make a promise to yourself. Promise that you'll stop treating alone time as something to endure and start seeing it as something to cherish. Promise that you'll start treating yourself with the same kindness you show others. Promise that you'll begin this beautiful journey of discovering just how amazing your own company can be. Because in the end, the ability to be happy alone isn't just a skill. It's a superpower. It's the foundation upon which all other happiness is built. It's the key that unlocks the door to true freedom. And that key, it's been in your hands all along. Walk out of here today knowing that you're not just learning to be alone. You're learning to be free. Free from the fear of solitude. Free from the need for constant validation. Free from the belief that your happiness depends on anyone else. Your journey starts now, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when everything is perfect. Right now, in this moment, exactly as you are. Thank you for opening your hearts and minds today. Remember, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. Make it beautiful.